I'm gonna keep it real. I've never written a cover letter.
Okay. Well,
Well, get ready for that. Hi, I'm Celina Oh, and I work at Sonoma as a packaging designer.
Hi, everybody. I'm Briana. I am a brand experience designer for Watson and Cloud.
Hello, my name is Grace. I work at IBM as a digital strategy, interaction, and business design consultant.
I started the first 2 months of senior portfolio, just focusing on my portfolio purely and kind of figuring out what storyline I wanted to represent for myself, like what kind of designer I wanted to be. And I chose the best projects that I think represented the kind of person, the well-rounded designer that I was.
The last semester, there was the AIJ portfolio review. That was kind of my way of starting to get into the industry.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that, okay, if I can get most of my portfolio done by that point, and I can, talk through at least a couple of the projects, then maybe some of these people will want to, have me join their company.
Right,
I don't know.
right.
A lot of people went into that whole event thinking that way too.
Mm-hmm.
But now being on the opposite side, like the industry side, I've realized that that's not always the case. Sometimes people are just there to really want to help you with your portfolio and figure out what you want to do. Not necessarily because they're there to recruit.
Right.
So,
okay.
And to be honest, I didn't know exactly what kind of designer I wanted to be completely. It wasn't until I finished the senior portfolio that I was like, I think I'm really into brand and experience design and, the kind of this wide spectrum thing. Not so much like UX, UI or like a package designer, like that's a little bit more funneled.
Mm-hmm.
So first 2 months of senior portfolio, I only focused on that. I already had a strong list of places that I really, really admired and design companies, agencies, tech industry that I was like, I think I could do well in those things.
And I started applying December because that process of it's like such a waiting game during that application season, because recruiters and companies do take some time to get back to you.
Right.
So I started fairly early. I think you don't want to be too early, but you also don't want to be too late.
From that moment on, which was about halfway through that semester, I had been gouging everywhere that I could. Looking on Angel.
You have Angel List? Maybe?
Angel List.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you do what other?
LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
The Die job list, Communication Arts job list.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just, following a whole bunch of studios on Instagram because, sometimes they just post it on their Instagram, like, we're looking for an intern this summer. Yeah. And then finding companies that I resonate with, like their careers page and just seeing if anything's available. I think I applied to maybe 10 places, which is not very much.
Mm-hmm.
Some people I know applied to maybe 30. Mm-hmm. And I can't even imagine how much time that took, because it really isn't simply copy and paste.
Right.
Because different companies are looking for different things. And maybe they don't want to see your entire portfolio. Maybe they only want to see certain projects that showcase what they think would be relevant to the job listing.
And my process of applying for things while still in school was I was anxious because you're doing all of this online. They don't know you,
Right.
you're typing things about yourself. You're like, I'm a good designer because of X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. It's very impersonal. And I was worried that I was never going to hear back from anyone.
During that time period of, 5 months-ish, It started off as a series of just, cold applications,
Right.
and things like that. And then I started getting an interview here, interview there, maybe an informational here and there, a coffee chat. And it was just a cycle of like application, interview over and over again. And there's a lot of padding of like time between all those things.
I wasn't wrong. Like, I didn't necessarily hear back from a lot of people. I think I applied to about 20 positions and I only heard back from like maybe 3.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Dude, I know.
Got 1 or 2 interviews to follow up with.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
And I was applying for a variety of places, or positions, design internships, junior designer, entry-level design positions. I was just like, man, I have this experience, right? I have, I think, a pretty good portfolio. Why am I not hearing back?
The places that I applied to, which I told you about, they weren't like really getting back to me. And what I found out about those companies that I was applying to was they would put the application out there and really look for people that already had experience.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Can be a little like sketchy in terms of like sometimes they're not accurate. Some things are way like exaggerated, like the job descriptions or things like that are exaggerated more than, what you're actually going to get and stuff. And sometimes like things aren't updated in like months, which is like terrible. I think recruiters and like whoever posts those things needs to be more diligent about that because, people are taking those seriously.
And the ones that were looking for interns, they actually already had vetted some people to potentially get those internships. And I didn't know about it until later because one of my friends actually got the internship before I had applied to it. I found out later that she got the internship while the application was still out there. Maybe that company just didn't take down the job listing.
That's the worst.
Yeah. So just FYI, that can happen.
Right.
And that's when I reached out to my mentor and I was like, what is this about? And he's like, it's because A, it's just like so competitive. And B, it's impersonal. So then I was like, all right, well, I've got to get a job. I've got to figure this out somehow.
We had spring show, which was at the end of the semester. I think it was a week before the last semester or the last week of school.
Yes.
When spring show finally came around, it was a huge success. We had a lot of people from industry show up. That's essentially how I had like 15 interviews afterwards.
What?
Yeah, but I wasn't the only one. Like, there were a lot of people from my class had a lot of interviews.
So like, what?
Yeah, I got several emails right after spring show like, hey, I came in. I don't know if you remember me. There were a lot of people there, but I came in and I received, or I grabbed one of your packets or your business card or something and really impressed, blah, blah, blah. Would love for you to come in to interview. And then at that point, I was being more like particular about like who I was going to meet with because there's a very limited amount of time between the end of school and when you need to start getting the jobs, right?
I think what I did really well through that process, because I had 2 weeks of solid interviews every day.
Right.
And also most interviews are like at least an hour to 2 hours long, I've noticed. If they're any less than that, either they don't want you or, they don't know how, they're just like, I don't know. It's just bizarre. I never had an interview that was any less than an hour or 30 minutes.
Okay.
Well.
So let me hear that again. You got 3 interviews and you got 3 offers.
Well, those people, those were the people that had either gone to spring show or seen my website and they kind of already decided that they wanted me.
Right.
So that's what I mean. They kind of vet people before they even Like,
what does vetting mean?
So they'll do their own research on you beforehand.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like if they're offering you an interview, they're pretty much saying you got it.
And I really presented myself in this full package at Spring Show where I had my books, my website, all the things that I wanted to give out, my business cards. I was dressed in a certain way. And like, what's great about that experience is like you get to meet the designer and see the work, and it's just the whole experience is very well rounded. And I think it's like speed dating. You really get to know someone quick.
Right.
Professional courtesy and common sense are probably something that's like taken for granted, not focused on as much more. Mm-hmm. I would have those two things in mind. Recruiters, interviewers, people you talk to at like networking events are people, are fellow human beings. And I think sometimes we can get lost in their titles and it can be a little intimidating or overwhelming, but they are people. So, mm-hmm. always approaching everything during that season of job searching mm-hmm. with professional courtesy and common sense is underrated and can make it or break it, honestly.
Just give yourself time, ask yourself questions, interview them. Like, your life is on, like, the future of your career is on the line when you're applying for these jobs. So, I mean, not saying like, oh my God, you're going to fuck up your whole life. I'm just saying really study it and think about yourself. And I think as beginner designers, when you have opportunities, you just want to grab at it and take the first thing that you get because you're so excited and you're eager and you want to make money and you want to get going. But go slow, take it slow. It's like, figure out really what you want in that.
Right.
Just the final thing on that is just, know your worth, know your value, because when you're first starting off in design, people are going to want to take advantage that you're so fresh and you have fresh ideas and you have lots to offer. And they're going to want to be like, that's great. That's fresh talent. That's a fresh voice. Let's bring her in, but only make her an intern, or like make sure, we only give her X amount of cash or something like that. Just go out there, talk to people like you're doing, seeing what they're doing, how they're getting, what kind of cash they're getting for it. Really give yourself as much value as you can, while also being humble, of course, because you are starting off fresh.
Right.
I think that I wish I could have maybe relaxed a little bit more and just kind of trusted in the process.
Right.
Even if I didn't get a job, like literally 2 days after graduating, I would have gotten one like 3 months later, 6 months later, it was going to happen. And I think that I put a lot of pressure on myself to immediately start working or to prove something. And that's on me. That's my personal journey, and that's not for everyone. I've put 4.5 years in design school. Mm-hmm. Am I going to get a design job? Like, what's going to happen here? Yeah. And it's some things that people don't actually talk about with this design process is like, it is very personal and it does take a toll on your mental at some point, but you have to kind of know when to step back and be like, that wasn't the best interview. That's okay. That is something that is no skin off my back. I shouldn't take it personal. Like, that's just kind of, that wasn't the one. That wasn't the right job. And I think that with every interview that I had, if it didn't go really perfect, I'd just be like, oh no, I could have done that differently or could have been better. But that's the learning process. That was what I needed to do to experience what was right and what is wrong. It's kind of like finding a best friend or like finding a partner or something, but it just, when it's right, it's right. And with IBM, it just felt really good. And I had a community there that I was excited to work with, and they were doing things that I was like, this is what I want to do. I have no doubts. This is it. And I think that that's what made me really lucky. But I've heard from other friends too that they've experienced that, where they walked into the building and they were like, yeah, this is it. This is where I should be. Oh. So, and everyone has that. You will have that too. I'm sure of it.
I did make a mistake was not keeping track of like, exactly the sort of timeline of each application. And then I got overwhelmed where I was like, having way too many interviews in 1 week, or just getting lost in like what I had applied to, what the status of what that application was looking like if they had not replied yet, if they were waiting on like a portfolio link or something. Like there was just a lot going on. So that's where I would say, just be organized about the whole thing, not just from the beginning, but throughout the whole process. Even if it's a rejection, make sure, you kind of have that checklist of like, okay, like cross that name out, like this was a rejection, remember to follow up, because you also don't want to forget to follow up. So yeah. And whatever that looks like for you, if that's like an Excel sheet, a Google Doc, a Drive, it's a physical printout like I sort of did in the beginning. It is important because I learn from my mistakes.
Well, I'm a huge fan of notes, like my entire life. It's my diary, essentially. I'm also a bit of an archivist, so I like to write everything down and like remember the day that it happened and the time and stuff like that. So I had just this whole new folder in notes where I was like, okay, here's the list of companies that I'm applying for. Here's the link to that application. Here's the person that I was talking to. Here's my phone number, Then I had like a list of places that I heard back from, a list of places that I didn't hear back from, and the list of places that I had actual interviews with. So it's just lists on lists.
Before I started applying, I kind of did what I did when I was applying for colleges back in the day, where I would collect, I feel like a lot of us, I think pretty much all the application stuff is online on the internet, right? No one's doing any mail-in applications, anything like that. So I'm going to say links. I would gather all the links of the job postings across all the different platforms I saw, or even just like a link that's like on the actual company website. And I printed all the like job, that job description page of like responsibilities and like all the different sort of logistical things on. I would print those and I sort of created like an actual binder. And I put them all in there, or a folder. I put them all in there. I love sticky notes. Find any excuse to use sticky notes. So I use sticky notes to sort of organize them. And then I went in with a highlighter and I read through all of the descriptions and requirements to apply and things like that, as well as role responsibilities, just to like see the language people were using so that I can also parallel that in my interviews, which is one strategy we can talk about later as well. But so because there are similarities, there's like, and they always change as well, they evolve. And so I read through those, highlight a bunch of things and had that.
I use Google Calendar to set up all the days, just the regular tools that people use, but it was cool. I could still go back to that one time in my life that was like just 2 weeks of interviews straight. And I can see that on my calendar and I can be like, that's kind of cool. Like, this is what I was doing on this day, this time last year. And just to record as much as you can. And also like remember the names of people. Like, okay, I talked to Dave at this design agency on Monday. And, if you can remember those things, because they will call you and they'll be like, hey, Briana, we had a great conversation with you. And then for me to be able to be like, hey, Dave, nice to hear from you, it makes a difference. And I'm not the best with names, but so I had to write it down.
Start looking into photo studios right away to photograph your projects. It's a huge undertaking. And to do it yourself is going to cause a lot of stress. But if you're good at it, then it's totally fine. It's very important to have great photography of your projects if you're planning to go into a field where physical products are important.
During that season of interviews, I know you and I have talked about this a little bit, but you have no idea what will come your way. Again, like that journey can consist of, you would think it'd just be like apply, interview, land the job, or, you know, don't land the job. Straightforward. Right. But like, there's all these like moments, you know, you might attend like a networking event, meet someone, they're like, hey, I really like your vibe. Like, come, you know, interview with me, or like, you want to grab some coffee. You know, there's different like moments, right? And during that time, you have no idea like what they're going to ask from you. And you do not want to be in the position where you're like, oh, sorry, I don't have that on me right now. Like, cover your bases. It's one of those moments where you're like, be safe and sorry. What's the phrase?
Yeah.
But yeah, just be ready and have all those in like your arsenal, like ready to go. And also like to like wrap up that sort of point, as designers, I think a lot of sometimes we forget that, you know, we are designers and we don't design our own personal assets. And so remember to design your assets. Anything you put out, anything you send over, make sure it's designed. At least professional, you know, or like work on the presentation, work on the professionalism. It's gonna leave an impression, you know. It's really up to you whether that impression is good or not. But sometimes, like especially as designers, our own personal brand and assets can speak volumes about us, especially when we can't be there in person to like vouch for ourselves. So very important to design your assets.
Start early. I missed out on opportunities because I was too scared to start looking into it and really applying at that point. So, you know, I told you I started looking about halfway through my semester. I know some people started looking in the beginning of the semester, and those people actually were getting job interviews earlier. And I started freaking out a little bit when they would come to class and be like, oh yeah, I had an interview with blah, blah, blah. And I was like, shoot. And then I realized, oh, it's because they started putting together their portfolio when they started school.
I think my first strategy to mention would be knowing your worth and keeping an open mind. In other words, like know what you bring to the table, but also have a heart of humility. Especially like as a newly grad, as an early professional, what you strive for should be great experience or great opportunities and like good experiences. Whether that comes through an internship, you know, we kind of talked about this, like comes through an internship or a contractual position, fellowship, whatever it is. It should be less of a focus, and more of the focus should be on like, you know, the actual opportunity and experience.
If I could have just told myself to slow down, don't drink so much coffee, it's hurting you. Also, you know, have faith and just trust in life, because so many things are going to happen that are out of your control, and you can't freak out about it because it's just going to hurt your mental. You have to know to just allow it to happen and trust in the process and in divine timing, and just know that you deserve this job. You deserve, you know, a good salary, and you deserve to have great teammates and coworkers and projects that you're excited about. And those things will happen for you because you deserve it, you know, like, because you worked hard. The interview process can be demoralizing, and it can be frustrating, and you can get really just like exhausted. But with every hit, you have to get back up, learn from that, and know that I still deserve the best. So I'm going to keep going out there and getting it. And you have so many great qualities, and I'm just excited to see what the next year for you holds too. And it's going to be great. You're going to rock it.
Honored to be even like relaying this knowledge to you. And honestly, it's a two-way street. Like, nice to reflect back and just learn from your mistakes. Never forget where you came from. And it's all going to get crazy good, but like crazy. So that's important too. Just kind of reflecting back on, you know, holding on to the grit you've probably earned and the tough skin you've probably grown while in design school.
Got it.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.